Hey, security pros, welcome back to the Hacker News webinar series. I hope you're ready, plugged in, focused for today because we are going to be talking about the validation gap. But before we do that, for those that are tuning in for the very first time to the hackernews.com webinar series, thank you so much for choosing to be here with us today. This webinar will take about 30 to 40 minutes of your time today, and it's available on demand at any point period in time. My name is James Azar. I'm the moderator on behalf of the folks behind your favorite website, thehackernews.com. I'm also a chief information security officer. So there's going to be no marketing fluff here today. We're just going to be talking to you practitioners as practitioners with the friends over from Picus on this validation gap. So let's get right into that. But before I do, comments are always welcome. Please, your interaction during these webinars makes the entire community better. Q&A is always welcome as well. But we don't do Q&A live. Obviously, this airs at 4 different times. It's pre-recorded, so we don't have the opportunity to answer your questions live. But when you do submit your questions through the platform, they do end up with our speakers who will reply to them via your registration email for the webinar. So if you registered the right email and you ask us a question, you're definitely going to be getting a response and interacting with our speakers one-on-one through your inbox after the webinar. Now, this webinar is all about why automated pen testing is not enough on its own. And that's a really important topic to be talking about today because as the buzz and the release around Mythos exist, as we're trying to close the gap between exposure management and knowing a vulnerability to exploit to what's an actual abused exploit in our environment, the kind of idea of automated pen testing always keeps coming up. So we're going to be talking about that. But joining us today are two fantastic experts. Autumn Stambaugh is the cybersecurity professional with 7 years of experience as a sales engineer and solution architect in the adversarial exposure validation space. And she's worked with practitioners like myself and my SOC teams to evaluate security gaps, validate controls, and improve detection and response capabilities. Can Yüceel is the security research lead at Picus with 10 plus years experience in offensive security and threat intelligence research. He spends a lot of time studying how real adversaries actually operate, not in the maybe we think they did it this way, but he's actually rebuilding the kill chain, which is going to give us great insights here today into what we're about to learn about this one. So let's get into why automated pen testing is a valuable and also very, very critical capability for any security program. You're looking to see what vulnerabilities in your environment are actually exploitable. You're trying to identify what the attack path is and how quick they can get into your crown jewels. And so when you put that all in play, you realize how critical this is as part of your security program. The challenge is it's kind of security validation is posed in a lot of different and with a lot of noise around it. And so we're going to figure out one way of how we quiet that noise to understand how to actually bring it in as practitioners to our environment. So let's start off with that, and maybe Can, you can kind of help me out here because here's one of the things when I look at automated kind of pen testing tools and I'm looking for validations and scale, right? Because large organizations, especially the one I lead, right? Like we scale fast. M&A, all of a sudden I'm adding thousands of seats to my organization, new environment, stuff I don't really know that doesn't exist there. And I'm trying to find findings. I'm trying to evaluate stuff on a very, very tight timeline. The business doesn't wait for security to do its job. The business says we're doing this. Now go make it work for us. Walk me through why we're kind of missing this validations and why do automated pen testing tools often hit a point where we don't really see good ROI on them, and then it creates like a misleading sense of maturity across our security program.
Uh, Hi, James. Lots of people are using automated pen testing tools in their environments today because we are familiar with pen tests. Then, as you said, the scope of the pen tests are getting larger and larger. So we need a way to automate it. That's why automated pen testing tools are a thing, and most of the organizations are turning to them as a solution. And however, we have a common pattern we see in the wild. Let me explain how it works, and then we can move to why it's a limited capability. Automated pen testing tools start from a fixed starting point inside a predefined scope, and it draws on from a static library that does not evolve at the pace of real threat landscape. So the first run, you see everything. It's an exciting thing, and the tool explores everything the scope can offer. It finds exploitable paths, it surfaces vulnerabilities, and teams walk away with a real visibility. However, it's the first run. However, as you go on, the problem is what happens next. By the second and third run, the tool traversing the same deterministic surface largely with the same payloads. So by the fourth run, it's mostly confirming what's already found. So net new findings drop sharply. And that decline is not the sign of the tool is not working or the environment got more secure. The tool is basically reaching its natural limit of what it built to discover within that scope. That's why we hit a discovery ceiling, and we did not find that security baseline. If we were to start the auto-pen test from a different starting point or with a different threat library, we would be finding a much more different picture. That's why we should not think that our security validation game is got better and our security posture got better. However, if we were to run the same tactics and with the same starting point, we would hit a discovery ceiling. That's why automated pen testing tools are not giving the same ROI with the first run and the fourth run.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, that look, a false sense of security for practitioners is I've got automated pen testing and it's finding less stuff, meaning I'm really much better at security, but that's not always the right way to look at it, right? It's you know, it's some people will argue that you can potentially replace breach and attack simulation doing this. Some of those arguments sound nice when you're listening to them, but then in practicality, they don't really work together, right? So how do you if a platform can exploit my vulnerabilities and it can move through attack path and it can actually demonstrate impact, would I still need breach and attack simulation though?
Sure, because it answers two different questions. The automated pen testing tools are here to validate your security posture offensively. However, breach and attack simulation takes a different approach and it validates the security controls that you have. With the automated pen testing, you are trying to exploit your way into different objectives like domain administration or ransomware objectives. However, with the breach and attack simulation, we are trying to see that whether your firewall rules are working as intended, your EDR flags different malicious operations, or your SIEM logs simulated attacks. That's why we often categorize automated pen testing as offensive validation, and we categorize breach and attack simulation as the security control validation tool. They are not stepping into their shoes, and they are not replaceable with each other, because with the automated pen testing tool, you do not know whether your firewall is working as intended. You are just seeing a blocked action, but you do not know that whether your firewall blocked it or not. That's why you need both tools to work each other, and they overlap. And they do not overlap exactly. So that's why you should not replace your breach and attack simulation with automated pen testing tool.
Autumn, what do you have to add?
Yeah. Just jumping in on what I see from in organizations from the CISO level all the way down to the practitioner is when it comes to automated pen testing, to John's point, right? It's really beneficial for understanding what does lateral movement look like, what does the potential blast radius look like, but it's using very known and familiar exploits and tactics and techniques, whereas the attackers are continuously evolving. And so where I've seen breach and attack simulation really become beneficial for organizations, layered really on top of what they might be doing from an automated pen testing perspective, is being able to understand at what point their tools and controls are going to prevent an attack. So specifically, John and his team here at Picus are really on the finger on the pulse of what threat actors are doing from an adversarial perspective. What are the common tactics and techniques that they're leveraging? And they're building those things into the tool in a faster way than automated pen testing is able to, due to safety reasons. And so what we're able to see is by layering both of those components of adversarial testing, we're able to understand, okay, what does lateral movement look like on the automated pen testing front? But really more specifically with our security controls, we can start to understand at what point are we going to prevent the threat actor? Is it at the network layer? Is it at the endpoint, the EDR layer? It just gives a more holistic picture of security posture and how their security stack is all working together to protect them from an adversary.
Yeah, I want to kind of close this part out a little bit if it's okay, because I think there's a fragmentation problem that we have to address where, if you run a very mature security program, you're doing everything we're talking about, right? But a lot of times those outputs don't always talk to each other. You're kind of waiting for someone to actually do it for you. So Autumn, I don't know if you or John want to take this one first, but what does control validated prioritization actually do to the noise?
Yeah, I can speak to it from my experience, right? And when we talk about Picus, where there is multiple components to the platform to give a more holistic view of exposures, really. So there's the automated pen testing viewpoint where we're looking at blast radius, we're looking at what's exploitable in the environment, and then we've got the security control aspect as well, which is giving us insight into how are our controls preventing or protecting the actions associated with an exploitation. And what Picus as a platform has done is bring both sides of that house together with the traditional vulnerability management perspective, right? What CVEs are we getting from our vulnerability scan? And then contextualizing that with how exploitable are things in the environment? How are our security controls or our compensating controls protecting us against the actions tied to exploitation? And then being able to better prioritize or even deprioritize findings based on how well their security stack is protecting them from a particular threat. And that's really the perspective or the context that we're looking to provide to customers, bringing together more of that defensive side of the house along with the offensive side, along with the vulnerability management side of the house, and giving them one singular viewpoint.
John, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can add that, as you said, James, most organizations are not short on tools. They are running automated pen testing, vulnerability scanners, breach and attack simulation, and cloud security tools, and many more. The problem is they have a bunch of outputs that are not talking to each other. Because every tool giving you that one is more critical than the other one, and we have scoring tools are scoring their own findings, and we have a global scoring systems like CVSS. The thing is, the same issue might show up in separate tickets and in separate tools, and nothing gets deduplicated, and your team are chasing the same issues found by different tools. That's why you need a way to consolidate each of these findings and say that, yes, my breach and attack simulation found this one, found this vulnerability and security gap. My vulnerability scanner found this, another one, and my automated pen testing tool were able to exploit both of them and show the real impact in my environment, because vulnerabilities on their own might not be as dangerous as the chained ones, because as critical level vulnerability sitting behind a security control genuinely stops the exploitation, does not pose the same risk as a medium rated one on the exposed edge. That's why you need a way to consolidate all of these findings into a single set of lists, a prioritized list, so you can address issues based on these findings, because you have a bunch of feeds coming to you. All of them are valuable, but you need a way to prioritize them, and you can deal with them as their priorities.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really fantastic point, I think, before we kick this off to Autumn, because I know, Autumn, you're going to walk us through a demo of what this looks like here in just a few minutes. But I'll say this, like there's a few ways that I can tell you from a CISO point of view, where when you have so many tools and you've got so much data coming at you, it becomes data overload, and it becomes missing the connecting dots of that data to actually give you a real, true risk perspective to your program and then to the business as a whole, right? And so getting all the data points in one place where you can actually like prioritize, but not only prioritize, but also identify the the potential impact to the business is the best ROI you can give your security program just from a practitioner point of view. Just like I 100% agree with that kind of point of view that you just shared. Autumn, should we kick this off to you so you can actually show us what we're talking about? Because PowerPoints. This is a no PowerPoint type of deal. For those who didn't notice, there's the full guide of what we're talking about right here. If you scan the QR code, you not only do you get the guide, but you get a special piece of malware we've injected inside of it that spies on you, and then all you see is Picus for the next 17 weeks of your life, everywhere you go. But I'm kidding, joking. No malware, but the guide is valuable, so download that. Autumn, let's show them what it is that y'all do.
Yeah. Let's jump into the platform, and I like to start here because I think it paints a nice picture of the vision or the intention of the Picus platform. Right? When we talk about discovery, let's bring in these fragmented data sources that John and James described. Let's bring in vulnerability management data. Let's bring in user context through Active Directory or Entra ID. Let's bring in your EDR contextualization around where agents are deployed or maybe not deployed. And let's use all of that to better understand how to prioritize that data, those exposure to those findings based on what we're able to accomplish through validation. So being able to actually test our environment against specific threats or specific threat actor groups and TTPs to understand how well are we protected against the actions associated with those various threats. And then mobilization, let's make this actionable from a remediation standpoint, but also a reporting standpoint and just a visualization perspective. So I like to start there, but I think, as we dive deeper into the platform, I mentioned right there that there is really a holistic platform at play. So I mentioned, right, tying into these different data sources through asset discovery. So let's look at, again, user context through Active Directory. If we're using maybe CrowdStrike as our EDR or Defender, and let's tie in vulnerability management data from Tenable or Qualys or Rapid7 to better start to paint some context around that. And the way that Picus is able to achieve that contextualization is going to be through primarily security control testing and attack path testing. And I've got both of those pulled up here so we can talk a little bit more about it. But when we talk about security control validation, this is truly intended to start to give you an understanding or give organizations an understanding of how well their controls are enabling them to both prevent as well as detect a threat within their environment. And so you'll see those metrics really littered throughout the security control component of the platform. What's our overall prevention result? What's our overall detection? So how well are we blocking, whether it's EDR blocking or firewall blocking, email blocking or prevention? And then how well are we actually detecting? What sorts of logging and visibility, maybe detections or alerts that are built into the SIM? How well is all of that functioning to give us proper visibility around a threat within the environment? So really that's the goal or the intention of security control testing, is to truly understand how our controls are performing against various threats. And if we really dive a little bit deeper into what that can look like, I'll jump into one of these simulations that we run against a particular machine on a daily basis. And this is specific to a ransomware family. And we can look and see how well are we preventing this ransomware threat versus detecting this ransomware threat. And we can then drill into the results or the findings from there. So this particular simulation is made up of various threats, the delivery components of email infiltration and network infiltration of the ransomware, and the ransomware campaign itself. And as we dive a little bit deeper into, let's say, the ransomware campaign for the endpoint, this is where security control testing gives a lot of granularity and a lot of visibility into exactly how their controls are performing against the actions tied to a threat, and at what point their controls would have stepped in to prevent the threat. And we can see all of the attacker objectives, so what they're looking to accomplish, as well as the actions or how they would accomplish those objectives, or how Picus is aiming to accomplish those objectives. And we can see just at a glance from an EDR perspective, as well as a SIM perspective, how well are we preventing and detecting these different actions. And we can see, right, getting username via PowerShell, not blocked, not alerted on by CrowdStrike, but that's okay, right? That's probably a fairly low level action, doesn't need to be something that is prevented or alerted on every single time. But as we move throughout this ransomware kill chain, we can see, again, how our controls are responding. So this disabling of defender features, this was something that was blocked, but not alerted on. And we can drill into those details, understand, from an execution perspective, what payload was leveraged, what logs were generated within the SIM in relation to this action. And then more specifically, in the cases where maybe our technologies aren't, we're not currently detecting or preventing a particular action or threat, this is going to give us more vendor-specific rule queries that we can implement. So if we're using Splunk as the example here for SIM, this is going to give me a vendor-specific query that I can implement to enable a detection or enable some sort of detection content to be able to in the future identify this threat within the environment through the SIM. So just at a quick glance, that really is the intention of security control testing. Let's understand exactly how our controls are behaving or responding, whether it's an endpoint threat and we're looking at EDR, or even a network threat and we're looking to understand from a firewall perspective, are we preventing and or detecting various network related threats? The other side of things, right, which we have talked a lot about, is the attack path testing or automated pen testing, and we've incorporated that into the Picus platform as well to be able to provide that perspective. So attack path testing is going to give organizations the ability to understand, what does the blast radius look like if an attacker were sitting on the network. And I've got an example pulled up here of really what that looks like, and the visibility that Picus will provide in terms of what attack paths exist and how far could the adversary get. And as we drill into that a little bit more clearly, we can see this initial access point, or the jumping off point of this assessment. And then from there, we see Picus go out and act as that adversary, perform enumeration against the domain, right? So we'll see, domain object enumeration, as well as, session and file enumeration. And we'll see harvesting of credentials, which in this case did lead to identification of domain admin. But that doesn't mean that Picus stops there. Right? We can continue to see how this adversary, or how an adversary would be able to branch out within the environment, what lateral movement looks like, or switching of user context. So as Picus picks up credentials and maybe it finds things that are more privileged, it will change that user context to be able to potentially pivot to additional machines. So holistically, this is looking to show you what's exploitable, what is the blast radius, how far could the adversary get given a specific scope. And really, when we talk about how Picus is looking to tie both of those perspectives together, the automated pen testing as well as the security control validation, that's where we get into exposure validation. It's bringing both of those pieces or both of those perspectives together to help teams or help organizations better prioritize the vulnerabilities that they're seeing from that traditional vulnerability lens. And we can create what are called business scopes here. So because we're bringing in all of that asset data, we can then parse it out in ways that are meaningful. And maybe my area of focus is Windows servers here. And this is going to give me some insight into all of the exposures or all of the vulnerabilities coming in from my vulnerability management solutions. And I'll go ahead and just take off some of these filters here so we can look at the data more holistically. But we can see, specifically, I'm looking at exploitable exposures. We can see all of this CVE data that's coming in from various sources. And where Picus is better able to give teams contextualization is going to be through this Picus exposure score. So we see that CVSS score, which if we take this first CVE as an example, is a pretty high CVSS score. But as we dig into that CVE a bit more granularly, we'll see that this Picus exposure score reflects actually a much less risk associated with this vulnerability. And that's because we're able to, or Picus is able to contextualize the vulnerability, contextualize the finding with the testing that teams are doing through security control testing and attack path validation. Security control effectiveness specifically, this is taking into account any testing that we're doing within our security controls. So we can see that we've tested 10 different web application related actions associated with the exploitation of this CVE. And we can see that we have 100% security control effectiveness. We also take into account exploitability, so the EPSS score, as well as how likely it is to be exploited or be exploitable in their actual environment, as well as business criticality. How business critical is the system to their environment? Is it, is it an external facing asset, or is it, tier 0, tier 1 type asset, or is it something that is maybe a bit less critical, as is the case here? all of that gets taken into account to provide this Picus exposure score, where organizations are then able to prioritize, or in this case, deprioritize findings based on how well they're actually protected. And I think this becomes exceptionally or especially meaningful when we're talking about Mythos and we have just such a sheer volume of vulnerabilities. It's sort of impossible to be able to test the exploitability of each and every single vulnerability that is found. But what we can test are the TTPs associated with those vulnerabilities or with the exploitation of those findings, and provide organizations the context of where they should focus and prioritize their time, because they have the compensating controls in place when it comes to the threat actor TTPs. I know I went through that very quickly. I'll pause or even pass it back to you, James. But I wanted to just give that more holistic view of the platform and the context and the vision that Picus is looking to provide to organizations.
So that's fantastic. And by the way, I got to tell you, as someone who sees a lot of demos, like I love demos. I love seeing what we actually talk about, like way more than I would like a PowerPoint. Like, thank you for saving me from the PowerPoint by death type of experience. I really do appreciate it. For those that actually want to see it in action, though, we're going to give you another QR code to go and actually check some stuff out there and connect with our friends at Picus and kind of see where that is. And if there's a takeaway I want every person watching today's webinar to take with them, is that our tools aren't always broken, like automated pen testing. They're valuable, but if we operate our tools in silos, then we are essentially operating the same way sometimes we argue our own business operates when it comes from a tech stack perspective. Everyone's operating kind of in their own silos and they're kind of doing their own thing, and there isn't a holistic approach. We have to actually practice what we preach. And to do that, we have to take a broader validation coverage approach to what we need to do. And that means we should be validating across network and endpoint controls and our detection and response and our infrastructure and our application path and identity and privilege and cloud and containers. And here's the buzzword we haven't heard today: AI, right? Like, took us 27 minutes to say AI today. 27 minutes, right? Like AI and a lot of the other emerging tech. We're maybe a year or two away from quantum being an actual thing in our environments as well. So you have to look at, how do we improve our validation coverage? How do these signals come together through an exposure prioritization intelligence layer that actually helps us turn fragmented findings into an actual queue that gets the job done for our security teams? And that's really important, because if we want to do that, we've got to find the platform to do it. Our friends at Picus put together a checklist. You can obviously see the demo here, and the checklist is right over there with the validation gap. Scan one of those, go check it out, get in contact with them, obviously, and learn more. Autumn, Sean, thank you so much for coming on today. I really do appreciate it. For everyone who took time, man, we like knock it out. I said 30, 40 minutes. We're like going to be done in 30. All right. One thing y'all should know before you drop: this webinar is available on demand. So, got friends, colleagues, people you like, even people you don't like. Share this with them. Don't hold on to good information all by yourself, right? Share. Let other people know this webinar is available on demand at thehackernews.com/webinars. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Chan. Thank you to all of you. Go check out thehackernews.com/webinars for a lot more content. We bring you the content you ask us for. So go there. Let us know what you want. Until next time, have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.